Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us here on the nerdiest channel on YouTube, the 1138 AA23 Nerd Herd. The 1138 is the channel where we review, discuss, talk about, and debate comic books, movies, and pop culture in general. I am your Padawan host, Cascio Pistachio. I'll be with you for each and every spine-tingling episode of the 1138, here to guide you down the rabbit hole of all things nerdy, geeky, and even a little strange. This show is versatile, multifaceted, and just a teeny bit adventurous. So strap in, hold on, and get ready for action. In this issue of the 1138, we begin part 1 of a 12-part series review of Black Hammer. Black Hammer is a Dark Horse Comics publication written by fan favorite Jeff Lemire, drawn by daring Dean Ormston, and colored by the dynamite Dave Stewart. It is a pulp-era styled narrative about a group of Golden Age superheroes mysteriously trapped in an idyllic, timeless farming community. They were the greatest heroes of a lost era. Golden Age crime buster Abraham Slam, interstellar adventurer Colonel Weird and his robot sidekick Talkie Walkie, Barbalian, warlord from Mars, Golden Gale, America's super sweetheart, Madame Dragonfly, mistress of the macabre, and Black Hammer, the invincible champion of the streets. But the age of heroes has passed. When we first enter this world of Black Hammer, we meet a farmer up at the butt crack of dawn feeding pigs in a pen. Talking to himself, he laments, "You get used to the place. 10 years today since we arrived. 10 years. I got used to this place, but the truth is, it didn't take much. This may sound weird since I grew up in the city, but from the first moment we set foot on this farm, I felt like I'd come home. There's just something about the air here. Something so familiar, so right to me. As a kid, I always wished I lived in the country. Never thought it would happen, but life has a funny way of throwing you a curveball when you least expect it. I grew up in the East End, rough part of town. Hell, it made me who I am. But I used to think I traded all for just a little bit of quiet, a bit of space. Despite everything that happened, everything we went through coming here, most days I wouldn't change it for the world." That last part was interesting to me, as it suggests most of the time he's truly happy in what has essentially been described as their prison. It caused me to wonder about the nature of the entity or being that exiled them there, or the nature or the circumstances. If a person or being, did they do something to the minds of the Hammers? I kind of get that sense that that's the case. The farmer finishes milking the cows and heads to the house where we find a little girl sitting on the stoop. He greets her. "Hello, Gail." The little girl responds, "Abraham." So this is our informal introduction to Abraham Slam, our Golden Age crime buster, and Golden Gale, America's sweetheart, as stated on the inside front cover. Then we get typical parent-offspring disagreement, for lack of a better term. Abe didn't hear Gail come in the night before. "So?" she responds. "Did you even come home last night?" he asks her. "What's it to you what I do, Abe? It matters to all of us what you do, Gail, you know that. Speaking of which, you're wearing too much makeup for a girl your age." Gail responds like a typical rebellious teenager, even though she's drawn to look much younger, by telling Abe, "F off." Ignoring that, he responds with, "And you shouldn't be smoking," to which Gail tells him again to fuck off, and then flies away. Now at this point, there's nothing to go on in terms of any real details on these two characters. Abe let us know the basics of the situation. There was a conflict 10 years ago that stranded he, Gail, and the rest of the team here in this idyllic farming community. As this is a long format series, the particulars are sure to be doled out over subsequent issues. One thing we do know is that Gail possesses the power of flight, But let's take a closer look at what we're seeing here. Gail looks to be a young girl of about 8 to 12 years old, endowed with the power of flight. Is this her only power? She's also smoking, which we all know there's obviously something wrong with that, as Abe points out. She cusses at him and has a pretty disrespectful attitude towards him, making their relationship seem like that of a typical parent-to-offspring relationship. Lemire sets it up like she's a rebellious teenager, but this seems to be an obvious misdirect. As she flies off, Abe rhetorically asks, "Do you have to do this today, Gail? Today of all days?" This line of dialogue, referring to their 10th anniversary of being trapped there, and obviously to Abe, there is meaning there, something solemn and important, something he doesn't think she sees or shares. Disgruntled, Abe enters the house and smells breakfast cooking, and calls out, "Boy, something smells good." The speech balloon carrying the response to his comment is square with rounded corners, and for all you non-comic book reading types, that usually indicates the speaker has an electronic or robotic voice. "Just take those muddy boots off before you come in this kitchen." This coming from what typically would be the wife or mother equivalent in an average household, only as mentioned, the voice is electronic or robotic, bringing us to our next introductions, starting with Talkie Walkie, the robot partner of Colonel Weird, according to the inside cover intro. Sitting at the table behind Talkie is Barbalian, and the always weird Colonel Weird, who's phasing up through the countertop next to the stove where Talkie's cooking. It's funny noting how Talkie, this sophisticated AI, seems to have taken on a domestic housewife sort of role, even though apparently it is the robot sidekick of a strange and weird cosmic adventurer. So on the roof of the barn, Gail is brooding, and is joined by Barbalian. She asks him if Abe sent him. He tells her that he wouldn't do something if Abe asked him to. He'd do the opposite. This is yet another element Lemire injects into his storytelling, that of a familial-like group of beings, thrust together unwillingly and unintentionally, though making the best of it. Yet it also points out an often unexplored aspect of relationship dynamics between superpowered teammates, one of dislike and discordance. This is interesting to note that although Abe appears to be their de facto leader, not all under his leadership blindly follow his direction or believe every decision from him is a good one. Or it may be that Barbalian sees in Abe a level of manipulation he doesn't like or resents. But Gail thinks Barbalian came to try to get her to come to the event that night, but he didn't. He's not sure he's going. She's surprised by this, and he asks if they do go, are they going to celebrate or mourn, as he'd at least like to know the theme. On top of that, Barbalian wants to know if Mommy Dearest will attend. With only one member of the cast left to be introduced, I can only assume that Mommy Dearest is Madame Dragonfly, of whom Gail says if she comes, it will definitely be a funeral. Taking us back to the group dynamic in which there is obviously discontent among them, regarding their anniversary, not all members of the group care too much for the ritual. Gail, as well as the others on the team, have a longing to return home and get back to the way it was. But Barbalian, which as his name suggests, is alien to the machinations of the human heart, or he just may be less sentimental on the subject. Barbalian says he doesn't miss it, that it's more like missing old friends you haven't seen in years. Seeing them again wouldn't be the same as it was. In contrast to Gail's feelings, Barbalian doesn't miss how it used to be, as he was a different person then, and we're giving a panel of him fighting what looks to be a dwindling army of arachnids. But is this shot meant to suggest the opposite in Barbalian? Is this one shot showing us that on some level, and just a tiny bit, that he does miss the action and adventure of a hero's life? Just a little? Interestingly, Barbalian thinks it was kind of silly, and that sometimes he wonders if it was real at all, or just a collective dream they all wake up from. And that line stuck out to me because it makes me wonder if that is a genuine thought, or is it influenced by whomever or whatever trapped them there. As noted earlier, Abraham Slam seems to have a sense of peaceful resignation to their situation. Neither he nor Barbalian seem to harbor the typical never say die, don't give up, we'll get out of this somehow superhero mindset. It makes me wonder if one of the things that makes it easier to hold them prisoner is some kind of hex on their minds, causing them to either resign themselves to their fate or choose to give up fighting for their freedom. He goes on to clarify that he does miss the freedom and ability to move about from one place to the next. He misses being able to access the rest of the world. But wait, when he says the rest of the world, does he mean the world they're trapped in, or does he mean the outside world where they came from? Following that, Gale's response is, I miss having tits. Wait, what? When I first read that line, I almost fell over laughing. This is hilarious, but it brings to mind the question, is the form she's in here her true form? Is she a kid superhero like that of Mary Marvel? Was she an adult that clicks her heels together 3 times and becomes a kid superhero? Or was she a full-grown adult superpower being when they were trapped here and has been aging backwards since they arrived? In the barn, we find Talkie-Walkie working on some crazy-looking contraption, and then Colonel Weird pops in. Talkie notes that Weird has been spending more and more time away in the past weeks, indicating that seemingly at no other time in the past 10 years they've been there that he's ever done this. So that might be important. Not to mention the fact that while Weird is able not only to teleport to any point within their prison, he's also able to teleport into and out of a place called the Parazone. Colonel Weird's speech balloons are not the normal type. His speech balloons suggest his cadence is wavy or echoing, maybe even dreamlike, for lack of a better term, and similar to that of Raven's from the classic New Teen Titans. Noted earlier, most of our heroes are still in possession of their super abilities, to some extent, but are apparently or seemingly unable to use them to escape their prison, bringing us back to Weird and his ability to teleport between their prison and this Parazone. I'm forced to ask, does Weird possess the power to travel from their prison back to their normal Earth or home? If so, did the person who put them there place yet another kind of mental block on Colonel Weird that allows him to pop in and out of this Parazone, but prevents him from teleporting back to the real world? I guess that answer seems obvious, but we're only pages into the first issue, and there are still lots of questions to answer. It seems passive-aggressively implied across all the members of the team that in addition to being imprisoned there, additional safeguards have been put in place to ensure our heroes cannot escape. But who or what did this, and why? That is the most important question in this story. Colonel Weird sees what Talkie is working on and asks if he's making himself, or herself, a mate. It corrects Weird, telling him it's a new probe he's been working on for months now. Talkie has hopes that it might finally be the one to make contact. So it seems that as a mechanical AI being, Talkie is immune to whatever mental whammy their enemy has worked on the rest of its teammates. Therefore, the drive to escape continues to run strong in him or her. So anyway, Colonel Weird lives up to his name by constantly rambling on about things that others don't understand. Things he claims are happening in this Parazone. Being alerted to something going on there, he dematerializes and blinks out. Abe arrives, looking for Gale and Barbalian. He's going into town to pick up some groceries. Talkie hasn't seen either of them, but needs more solder for his projects. Now Abe's a bit dissatisfied as he asks if he's still working on that thing. And Talkie wishes, Abe was more supportive, but Abe's on that shit and declares, well, maybe I don't think we need rescue, Walkie. So again, it is lines like that one that has me believing something is up with Abe and some of the other characters being so blasé about their predicament. I voiced my thoughts on this subject, but we'll have to wait for whatever revelation or confirmation Lemire will provide. Across the way, a robed and hooded figure watches them as they leave. She's got a raven perched on her shoulder. Behind her is an old shack. There are vines and roots curling into and out of and all around. And in the window behind her is an indistinguishable figure, or what looks like a ghost of some kind. Who is this mysterious figure? Is she one of our imprisoned heroes? Is she their captor? Let's see, of all the heroes mentioned on the inside cover, we've met Abraham Slam, Golden Gale, Barbalian, Colonel Weird, and Talkie Walkie. The only two members of the team we've yet to meet are Madame Dragonfly and Black Hammer. Based on her style of dress and creepy demeanor, I'd say this must be Madame Dragonfly, a creepy, supernatural, Zatanna, raven-like character. But even more peculiar than that is what she says as she notes them heading off into town. I'll need to concentrate. And as noted in my opener, she is the supernatural witch equivalent of the group, which means to me, she means to work some kind of magic while Abe and the others are in town. The question is, what kind of spell? Is it in favor of our team or against them? Is she using her magic to try and find a way for all of them to escape, or to keep them imprisoned? It just seems like Madame Dragonfly is set up to be an ambiguous team member, one whose loyalties we're meant to question, and at this point, I surely do. Then we get into a little soap opera drama with Abe. In town, it seems he's smitten with a local townie named Tammy. Tammy the Townie. It's a cool little aside that's entertaining, a bit predictable, but sort of cute at the same time. Barbalian shapeshifts into a human being to blend in. After shopping, he meets the town's newest pastor, Father Quinn. I don't know about anyone else, but when I first met Father Quinn, he immediately struck me as creepy and apparently gay. But he and Barbalian, in his human guise of Mark Martz, strike up a friendship. Another nice touch comes when Lemire brings some of the attention back to Gale as she's brought into the diner where Tammy works in police custody. Red, the town sheriff, and strangely enough, or coincidentally enough, Tammy's ex-husband, caught Gale shoplifting cigarettes from the local stop and go. This is genius plotting here, and just too funny, as whatever Gale's true nature is, in this world she's kept in the form of a 9-year-old girl who obviously shouldn't be smoking or cursing at adults. So Gale and Abe have to try and keep up the pretense in order to keep from blowing their cover. It's really hilarious. Later that evening at 8 o'clock, Abe calls for Gale and Barbalian, but gets no answer. So he goes out to a place in the woods alone. Talkie Walkie shows up, asking about the others, but Abe's uncertain, assuming they've had enough of this annual ritual of theirs. As all hope seems lost, the rest of the team begins trickling in, one or two after the other. This makes Abe smile. An important aspect to this meeting place is that it seems to be a clearing flanked by a number of trees, and at its center is an old sledgehammer. They all gather before it. It seems no matter the hell they put each other through, they're still a team, and they're still a family. But for all that, family can still piss each other off, and that's what they've been doing to Abe lately. I like what he says to that effect. I know we never wanted to come to this farm, but we made our choices, our sacrifices, and this is where we ended up. I tried my best to make this a home, for me for you. But all you do is whine about how we can't leave and how we're stuck here. Well, boo-hoo. At least we're still alive. We can never forget that. Most of all, we can never forget him, what he gave up for all of us. The he Abe refers to is a man named Joseph Weber, a brave man. He was someone hard to intimidate as he never ran from a fight, and apparently he gave his life so that they could have the life they have now. So this is, or was, the Black Hammer, the title is named after, and the final member of the team who sacrificed himself for the sake and safety of the team. Abe shames them for their attitudes of restlessness and dissatisfaction, although in a lot of ways he's totally wrong in my book, anyways. Why? Because I can see it from either perspective. On the one hand, you have a group of individuals thrown together in an unwanted situation. They had lives, personal and private lives, away from their heroic deeds, and it's only natural to want to get that back, despite having been marooned in a peaceful reality. But what were the events that led up to Black Hammer needing to sacrifice his life to save them? Was it that sacrifice that imprisoned them there? Was it an attempt at escape that cost him his life? Is that why they all seem less interested in trying to escape, because they know it could cost them their life? I don't know. This is the very first issue, and lots of questions will arise so early on in the series. But I can't wait to find out all the fascinating details. Thoughts, concerns, objections? Feel free to comment below. I'd love to hear what you all think. In closing, we leave the confines of the idyllic prison and go to a place called Spiral City. We have a reporter for the Global Planet, nice play on that one, sharing in the annual tradition of remembering the fallen heroes. They are mostly forgotten, or so it seems, myths and legends, but this reporter, who was only 13 when it happened, remembers it all. But with no bodies found in the aftermath, the heroes were presumed dead. After making the single greatest sacrifice any human or superhuman could make, they are still remembered, hailed and lauded as the greatest heroes of a lost age. Abraham Slam, Golden Gale, Barbalian, and Colonel Weird, and the reporter's dad, Joseph Weber, the Black Hammer. She believes they're still out there, somewhere, and she's determined to find them. And that's it for issue number 1 of Black Hammer. My overall take, great setup, great premise. It takes an age-old plot device and stops it, slows it down, to allow us to take a closer look at how heroes react when their plans go awry. How they deal with a victory that becomes a defeat in a very masterful way. Lemire takes the concept of the quintessential supervillain trap and turns it on its ear. He adds the what-if factor and asks what would happen if a team of superheroes were bested by one of their archenemies, but instead of being killed, are locked away in a separate dimension for all time. Not to be tortured or tormented, not in the traditional sense, but what if that punishment is continued as living out carefree, peaceful lives in an idyllic farm community? Throughout this first issue, it seemed evident, at least to me, that there seemed to be some level of mind control involved in keeping the heroes from even wanting to escape. They all seem to be in full control of their powers, and yet, on a day-to-day basis, they hardly seem concerned with the means of escape. Colonel Weird has the power to walk between dimensions, but the only place he focuses on is the spare zone, where apparently dangerous and troubling things are brewing. Madame Dragonfly is a mystic of some sort, but it may be that her magic isn't strong enough to breach the veil between worlds and send the team home. Is she even loyal to them? Or maybe I'm off base. Maybe I'm picking up on the wrong cues. Although it seems their foe has created the ultimate form of revenge and trap them in a completely inescapable prison, and that's it. But then, why not kill these bothersome, pesky heroes? Why imprison them but provide them with peace and tranquility? Or perhaps therein lies the torment, actually giving them the highly sought after end to the never-ending battle, and actually rewarding them with the peace and quiet all of us ultimately seek. Well, for those of you caught up, what are your thoughts on how and why of it all? Is the trap so escape-proof that the heroes simply realize there is no way out and just resign themselves to their fate? Or are their minds being controlled in some way to make them content and complacent, and keeping them from trying to break out and continue to thwart their enemies' diabolical plans? We have lots of questions, and as this is only the first issue, none too many answers. For those, you'll have to tune in next time for part 2 of the 12-part series review of Black Hammer. Queries? Comments? Leave them all below in the comments section. Also, please let me know if you've enjoyed this video or not by clicking the thumbs up or down icon. And if you did like this video and you're anxious to know when the next video in this series is uploaded, go ahead and click the subscribe button. Thanks a lot, and until next time, have a nice read.